Welcome back to Bedroom Studio Magic. Today we'll be discussing the third and final phase of mixing, and I like to approach each of these phases with sort of an hour of intuitive mixing followed by several sessions of fine tuning. And just a quick recap, our first phase was all about volume. We automated the volume, we set the levels, we used compression. We were just dealing with getting the volume of each track just right. Second phase was all about tone. We used some EQ carving, maybe a little bit of saturation here or there, some distortion, maybe even a high pass filter or a low pass filter here and there for effect. And the third and final phase that we'll be talking about today is sweetening. And what makes sweetening different is that we're going to be dealing with all sorts of different things, from delays to reverbs, auxiliary sends. You might even use compression and EQ during the sweetening phase if it's something you didn't think of during mix 1 or mix 2. So I don't want to give too much away about this new Little Cricket song, but I have soloed all of our drums here so I can show you 5 things that I did to the drums that I consider to be sweetening. The first is a delay that I have automated on and off on the snare under the electronic 909 drum track. And this echo simply comes on and off basically every other measure during this section of the song to create a cool repetitive effect on the snare at certain times. So just so you can hear what that sounds like. So it's a pretty cool effect. There was nothing wrong with the snare before I added this, but it just needed something extra. And a delay was exactly what it needed. Our second sweetening effect on the drums that we're going to talk about today is reverb. The regular drum snare sounded great, but there are parts of the song where the mix gets kind of dense and it gets lost. So I added an auxiliary track that I could send the snare to, and it is also automated on and off during particular parts of the song. So here's what it sounds like when it comes on during this heavier part of the song right here. There's with it off and on. So it's a pretty big difference, but in the context of the song, it's not as noticeable. It just kind of adds a little bit of a tail to the snare so that you can hear it better through the mix. Third thing I wanted to talk about is EQ that I added to the drum subgroup. And if we look at it, you can see that it's just a simple low pass filter. So I'm cutting off the high end of the drums as a whole. And this kind of pushes it back in the mix. It really stifles the tone, the high end, the crack, and the cymbals. And the reason I did this is during this part of the song, things get kind of quiet. The drums aren't really doing much. And it just sounded better if they were in the background. So here's what's going on here. So it's not a major thing, but to the listener in the context, I think it'll make sense. It allows the other instruments to come forward and take over the mix. But the drums are still there. It's really just an effect. The fourth thing that we'll talk about is an auxiliary track called Shell's Comp. Now, this is something I could have done in the first mix, but at the time, I thought the drums sounded good. But by the time I got to sweetening, I realized that the drums were not, they didn't have enough weight in the song. Kind of like what I did with the reverb, I wanted to do something that would allow the drums to to sort of come out, to just hold more weight in the song, without having to boost the volume like crazy, and particularly the low end of the drums. I could try, I could EQ things, I could turn the volume up, but it didn't seem like I needed to do anything drastic. So what I did was I took the spot microphones, the kick, the snare, the toms, not the overheads, not the microphones that are picking up all the cymbals and everything, but just the spot microphones, which are up close on the shells there. I took those microphones and routed them to an auxiliary track, added a low pass filter that just cuts out all of that high end, all of that crack, all of them cymbals, and then compress the crap out of it all. And what that does is it allows me to take that auxiliary track and just bring it up ever so slightly under the regular mix until the drums sound fuller, heavier, and you'll hear the difference if I bypass it. So this one's really subtle, but it does make a difference, and especially in the context of the mix as a whole. This shells comp, it's a trick I believe I learned through Graham Cochran's Recording Revolution, but it really does help just kind of add weight to drums during heavy parts. It's really useful in rock music. And the last thing I want to talk about is this reverse cymbal here. I have a whole track dedicated to one little clip. There's a break in the song here, and the instrumentation kind of starts building up at the end of this break until we kind of burst into the next section of the song. And without this this little clip here, I thought it sounded a little empty. And I wanted something to kind of bring in this transition. So without the clip here, you can see it sounds fine, but it's just kind of like a sudden start. But if you listen to the mix as a whole, these other instruments are doing something right before that, right before this section starts. So the drums are kind of abrupt. Now, there is a convenient cymbal hit right here. And so what I did was I cut that cymbal out, reversed it, and just stuck it to the beginning of this part right here. And so now what we have is very cool. This is definitely sweetening because it's not really, in fact, you could call this performance almost. I mean, if this is something that I thought of during the recording stage, I could have tried to do it then, but I don't typically like to go back and re-record things if I don't have to. There's so many tricks that we can use in the studio if we don't get things exactly right the first time, and you're never going to get things exactly right the first time. So it's good to be resourceful and be able to think of things like this in the moment. Those are the 5 things I wanted to talk about today. There's a lot more going on here, probably other sweetening things going on with the drums themselves, but certainly with the rest of the mix. And this is your time to shine as the producer. These are things that you won't always think of while recording, and a lot of times you won't think of these things during mixes 1 and 2. So mix 3, that's the one where the producer really has to get creative. If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck out there. Have fun. Stay safe. Peace.